A warm welcome to Aruna C. Newton, who is Global Head Diversity and Inclusion at Infosys and Head of Sustainability, Governance and Reporting. First of all, three cheers for the Infosys team. You were one of the participants in last year's 21 Days Ally Challenge, and this year you're part of the top three winners. As one of the winners of Pride Circle's Ally Challenge, you're one of the few Indian companies that have participated and have reached this position, top three. So we are very keen to hear about your experience and all the ways in which you've supported the LGBT plus community in your workplace and through your work. So I'm just going to jump into my first question for you. There has been a phenomenal rise of the allies from last year to this year at Infosys. Would you say this is because of the continuous LGBT plus affirmative actions that Infosys has taken?
Thank you very much, Shambhavi, and thank you for the compliments for having secured a place on the leaderboard of the Ally Challenge. To me, this is very, very special. It's not just about learning, it's also about bringing people together. So I think any effort that actually raises awareness, but importantly builds networks and brings people together is very, very special. At Infosys, of course, as equal opportunity employers, we ensure that we provide a very inclusive environment for the diverse talent that we attract. The LGBTQ community, the employee resource group for the LGBT community and their allies is called iPride. It's a very special group to me, a group of allies, because we've done a lot of work together, and I think we've learned together in that journey. I will confess there are miles to go, but I'm happy with the small successes that we've made along the way. I think our biggest effort is to continue to build community. And towards that, there's a lot of work that we've done with regard to communication, with regard to human libraries online, sharing of stories, personal testimonials, blog sites. We've got a really cool intranet ecosystem, with an Infosys television, Infosys radio, blog spaces. I mean, we're spoiled for choice. So there are many avenues. There are many avenues for us to reach out and look at how we might engage with the larger Infosys organization to build this awareness. Thank you once again.
Lovely. I love the name iPride. That's such a fitting, very warm, welcoming name for an ERG. Aruna, I will move on to my next question. Though you have covered some of this, in case you can elaborate a little more, my next question is, how do you build that community of allies, particularly in such a large organization like Infosys? And what were your other strategies to mobilize people internally?
So, Shambhavi, I'm going to use the word ally a little more broadly to suggest everyone who demonstrates sensitivity and care to another, a fellow employee. And I use the term ally generally to refer to every action that is expected from every Infosian to make the other person feel warm and welcoming. So what we've actually done is we've hard-coded our inclusion stand in the code of conduct. So the Infosys code of conduct has a very, very strong pillar that reads respecting each other. So there is an expectation as part of the way you behave, and every Infosys employee reads and signs the code of conduct. It's an expectation of behavior. So I think the piece around respecting each other and creating an open, welcoming, an inclusive environment is everybody's responsibility. So to me, ally is a larger group of people who demonstrate this care, concern, and sensitivity to another human being. Yes, we are a large organization, and I will confess it's very difficult to reach every person to ensure a consistency of stance, thinking, and action. I mean, that'd be really difficult to accomplish. But I think we continue to chip away at it through a number of these channels that I referred to, through having conversations, to speaking more. And I think many times having the conversation gives you the license to discover more in many ways. And you may not know all the answers. And I think my responsibility is to continue to create a safe space for these kinds of conversations. We are doing our bit, but for example, our iPride ally group is about 2,000 strong globally. But I'm not happy. I want 250,000 employees to be part of the group. So I think we can continue doing more. We can continue doing more. We need the education. I think every one of us has a role to play in building a more compassionate world.
These are really lovely ally actions to hear about, and the fact that the workplace culture, as well as having an institutional program of the code of conduct, very, very effective, very, very meaningful. And through all of these ally actions that you've taken, and through the ally challenge that Pride Circle had run, could you tell us what the outcomes of this challenge were?
That's a very pointed, very, very putting me in the spot kind of a question, but I'm happy you asked that. I think the ally challenge and the participation of Infosians, we had a very short window to socialize the program. We did it nevertheless. We came in a little late. We did it nevertheless, so I'm happy with the results. I wish we could continue the challenge through the year and continue to kind of engage employees on this. We've had a number of pieces of feedback from various stakeholders around continuing to strengthen this kind of engagement. So I think this whole piece about gamifying learning is clearly a wonderful way to go, and we've initiated some action in that regard. We've also built a very cool repository of learning assets that we've curated on LGBTQ learning that I'm very, very proud about, because it's not learning as you would we're all challenged in this huge virtual world that we are in, but the best we can do is create content that is immersive, that is engaging. We've tried to do that through a lot of reflection. So this is not about knowing definitions. This is not about checking off the boxes. This is not about list the following behaviors, because I think each of these over time you can fake it. This actually, the way we've designed the learning is reflecting deeper on why you feel the way you do. So I think the invitation to reflect, something that we pay very little attention to, in today's fast-paced life. Sometimes you're afraid to sit down even with yourself for a minute, because God knows what you will uncover. But this whole idea of going deep within yourself and reflecting, I think gives you a pause. I think the first opening up of the mind comes through awareness. But what if you don't want to be aware? And I think reflection, in many ways, asks you some of these uncomfortable questions in a non-threatening, very, very kind of safe way. So I'm really happy about the courses that we've created. I realized that we needed to do more, and we've come up with these 3 modules that we've now been rolling out and getting excellent feedback. I will not lie to you and say 100% of the Infosys community has consumed the learning. We have miles to go, and we intend to continue to socialize this learning. We're not going to stop. We have the whole year ahead of us, but we've got a cool set of resources to be able to leverage. We are looking at gamification. One of the ideas that I want to consider also is to give mental health a little more focus. While we've done it in the past, while we continue to do it, and I don't want to call out mental health very specific to a particular context, because, you know, mental health is a topic that actually cuts across. I mean, you and me can use inputs on how to be on mental health, on topics related to mental health. I mean, every one of us can use inputs. And I think the pandemic has also created a huge pressure on every one of us in so many ways, personally and professionally. So I think this generic topic of mental health, but getting a little more specific on how we might address areas that require a little more attention for the community is an area of my interest. But, you know, one thing I'm really kicked about, so I'm going to create, you know, an open environment, more sensitive environment, hoping everyone's going to get educated, consume the learning and love it, etc., etc. But I think my biggest action will be to strengthen the confidence of members of the community themselves. Because, you know, I think this is a journey that requires both sides to come halfway at least. So I do believe there's a lot of work that we've been doing around creating sensitive ecosystems. My hope is that the next phase of our journey will take us deeper into the individuals themselves to help. And that's why I was making a reference to mental health. I don't have a roadmap per se right now with timelines, but these are kind of areas of action that we would like to explore and build on further.
It's very wonderful to hear that you already have so much under your belt and that you're aspiring for more. Like, that's something, you know, I do hope that others watching will take inspiration from. Infosians are out there doing this, and that's so wonderful. And I'm sure it's not easy to I'm sure it's not easy to come to this stage. And I was wondering, what are the unique challenges and opportunities that Indian organizations face when it comes to LGBT plus inclusion?
So, you know, some of what I'm going to say will be generic. But the first of them is, how do you provide people the confidence and the safe space to self-identify? Oftentimes there's this chicken and egg story of, you know, should I come out? And then, do I really want to come out in an organizational setting? I mean, I have a life beyond the organization, right? I mean, I don't even care if anyone in the organization knows or not, for example. Yeah. So, so there's a piece around an individual's choice, but there's another big piece around an organization creating the enablement around making that choice accessible. I won't say easy because, you know, it's never an easy choice, but making it comfortable, making it accessible. Sometimes what happens, having that information allows us then to get a little more specific on interventions, specific on supports. Because for the longest time, I think organizations have been operating in this gray zone of who really is the community? What specifically do they want? And how might we engender a more inclusive work environment for the community? So I think I want to do a little more around making it okay for people, should they choose to self-identify with the confidentiality that they deserve, and look at that information to see if it could feed into the way we address some of these pieces. So I think organizations opening up their HR systems to permit self-identification and making it comfortable would be a good step in the right direction. And I would say this for all, for every dimension of the diverse demography that you address. I think the recognition that not everyone is the same and that the universe of people that you attract is diverse, which is good, which is how creative audiences should be, and that's the whole power of leveraging the talent pool available to you. Then make it comfortable for each one to be themselves. Make it comfortable for each one to acknowledge their identities, to receive the kind of support that they would like, to create what we term, the holy grail of the level playing field. Yeah, I think we have a concept of it in our heads. We think we're doing the right things, but I'm not so sure every single time. So there is an opportunity for us to learn more. I think the second piece is stop making assumptions around what do you think people need. And in order to be able to do that, the ability to have a conversation with people and then act on the conversation. So it's just not about the conversation, but to be able to act on the conversation, to build the trust that you are indeed serious about making the next step, I think is a very fair way to go about this. So on the one hand, help people self-identify. In the second, open out and create forums, channels, so employee resource groups where members of the community and their allies are members, provides in many ways a safe space. You don't have to give too much away, but you have also an ally network, an ally group that is part of this group. I think it creates a kind of a safe space. But I think beyond engaging in conversations and asking people what they want, or even assuming what people want, I think it's being able to have those honest conversations and acting on the conversation. I think these are kind of like 3 simple steps. I mean, they sound simple, but to be able to implement them consistently and uniformly is a challenge. But these are 3 ideas for organizations to consider. And I acknowledge that in many types of diverse demographies, there are different things that are needed to bring a kind of synergy. But it's not always easy for organizations to give it the attention that it deserves, to be able to take it the whole hog, go the whole 9 yards, and do your bit. But I think the more we do that, the view is we will be more successful. So I think we have to be able to create that kind of space. Initially, very sadly, many organizations in India referred to the law as being a showstopper. Interestingly, nobody read the law. Nobody actually understood what it meant. But the assumption was, I don't want to do anything that's going to make me stand out. So there's also this fear of what is acceptable in a larger social group. And then, of course, there came the, we had the abolition of the draconian section, etc., etc. And then I actually thought people would now have their fears allayed. But I did not see the kind of progress I expected. Now that's moved, okay, now, like we say, aage bolo abhi wo. Now what's the next step? And so for the longest time, that was the crutch, saying, I don't want to do something because God knows it. Yeah. And to anyone who's not understood the topic enough, it's enough to frighten them off. So we had everybody from insurance providers saying, we don't want to do, when you do group insurance, when you do, for the longest time, you had insurance providers saying, no, we can't do medical insurance for this. And I think it just came from a lack of willingness to understand the subject, to explore further. There was no technical difficulty. It was portrayed as a technical difficulty. Actually, there wasn't anything. It was the biggest farce that we kept going for the longest time. And funnily, as more and more people said it, it got stronger. And then suddenly the section was abolished. And then everybody said, what were we making such a noise about? Let's go and read what the act says. Oh God, it has nothing to do with the workplace. Okay, then all right, and so I think even as human beings, whether we'd like to admit it or not, there is a piece around social permissions that people kind of seek. And suddenly when you say, okay, there's no restriction. And for the longest time, that's been your crutch. And then you're suddenly realize you have no idea beyond that. It reminds me of when I was younger, we could ask for permission to stay out late, go out to watch a late night movie. We'd beg for this permission. We'd create the most exciting excuses, interesting excuses for why we had to be out and watch that movie and why it was so super, super important. I think short of saying it contained the exam question paper for the next exam, we said everything. And then suddenly my dad devised another strategy. He said, from now, you are responsible for your own actions. You can choose to go out when you want and return when you want. I hope that you will remember. You will have a conscience, and your values and upbringing will guide your decisions. Suddenly we were all looking at each other saying, oh God, what does that mean now? I mean, the shoe is firmly on our foot. For the longest time we said, Daddy is standing at the door, we cannot go out. Suddenly he said, I'm not closing the door. The door is open. Leave. Yeah, let your conscience be your guide. And I hope the values and your upbringing will stand you in good stead. Guess what? For a year, nobody went out late. Because we were trying to digest what is the meaning of this new freedom. So, I'm just relating this to say that you have a crutch which continues to explain why you are the way you are and why you behave the way you do to whoever wants to listen to it. Funnily, the other person also has the same crutch. So you create a group of the crutch community, and then suddenly the crutch disappears. And then you're left wondering, oh God, now what happened? My world's changed. Now I'm supposed to make a decision here. What do I do next? And I think that's happened to all of us as a country, as a group, as a society, as a world. Yeah, I think different organizations, countries, and peoples have been through these journeys themselves. But I think right now there is an opportunity for us to say, okay, what we didn't do, we can do nothing about. But going forward, can we create systems that capture this information? Can we create environments that promote this conversation? And can we please act on the conversations that we have?
So at this juncture, I do want to mention, last year, Pride Circle developed a definitive benchmarking tool called the India Workplace Equality Index. This was for organizations to measure what is essentially their allyship. And I think this also ties into what you said about these social permissions, having this very valuable creation of an environment that is open, and you have people interacting with each other. So people who checked out the index, the workplace index, a lot of foreign companies had come across it and they had taken this journey with us. There were a handful of Indian organizations. But if you could, once again, elaborate a little more on how more Indian companies, Indian corporates can foster that LGBT plus inclusion.
I think there's another hype about how foreign organizations do it better than us. And oftentimes when we want to look at implementing anything, we look west and we think they're having the best time on earth. Yeah, which is not necessarily the case. I think the challenges are uniform. I think they have some of these systems in place to prove that they're working on it. I think, however, there is more to do. Oftentimes, we look outside to see who's doing it better and who's creating something. I think companies outside India have a few structures and systems in place which allows them to be able to prove that they have something that exists. How happy or how included, let's not forget the objective. The objective is, do people from the community really feel included? Do they feel valued? Do they feel respected? Do they feel part? And I think there, obviously, there is a lot more. Because there, you're getting into slightly fuzzy, unstructured space where an organization can do only so much. But, it's also about individuals. It's also about mindsets. It's also about kind of moving the needle on something that's tougher, and that's behavior. So I think Indian organizations must open their eyes and minds to this inclusion through very simple, structured steps. It's like saying you keep doing something over a period of time and then it becomes a part of the way you do it. So I think you get into making some of these a way of life. And slowly, as you begin to open the doors, as you begin to ask questions, as you begin to permit self-disclosure, etc., you are also in many ways constructing, an ecosystem which says, you're perfectly okay. This is the place for you, which means, and you have to continue to work with changing behavior of managers, peers, teams, leaders. Now, see, that is not going to be the easiest thing to do, but that's never been the easiest thing to do. I mean, take for example, the inclusion of women. I think the world has been at it forever. Yeah. And countries and communities have failed miserably. Of course, there are a few stalwarts, there are some shining stars, there are some very successful women. But can you broad brush this and say the world has worked on this for 100 years? What's changed? And if you really ask a woman anywhere in the world, she's going to say very little. So I'm just saying these journeys are tough. These journeys are also integrated not into what a corporation can do, but they are social journeys of people, of communities, of entire nations, geographies, groups of people. Yeah. And it's not about making the shift today or tomorrow. It's something that they have been conditioned for generations, since the beginning of civilization, kind of, I mean, very long, very long. So I think we've got to kind of, in some ways, phase this. So I'm saying Indian companies don't feel bad because the Indian ecosystem has cleared a number of these doubts. So legally, there's no problem. You don't have any of those fears. If the insurance provider tells you I cannot do it, you can actually threaten him. But, I'm just saying, you can really get aggressive. But so today you don't have some of those barriers which did exist and some people did play them. Now that everything's opened up, then the ball is truly in the court of the organization to look at how might you set up more structured efforts to first understand who's your audience, what is the expectation of the audience. Yeah. And if we look to the community outside, and this happens to every demography, every group, you keep looking at a larger ecosystem from where the talent is coming. And you begin to feel that, oh my God, I don't have a critical mass of this kind of talent pool, or I don't have such and such educational qualification for every member of this pool. Yeah. Of course, there you have a bigger challenge where you have to change the way you work. You have to change the way you look at how you define roles, for example. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just saying, there's so much change that the churn that the world is already going through. And some of these inclusions might require a complete change in the way you're organized as a business. And those changes will take a little longer. They're not going to happen overnight. I remember when I fought for the 6-month paid maternity leave for women, people threw me out of boardrooms and said, you will be the single reason why corporate India will never hire another woman. And I remember standing up and saying, our time has come. We are so big that you can't ignore us anymore. Yeah. You'll be foolish to ignore 50% of your talent pool. So I mean, and yet we continue to fight for a number of things, building inclusive work environments. So there is a piece around arriving at a critical mass, but that's going to take like generations. It's going to take a long, long time. But right now, I think corporate India can stop looking at the excuse of the social, of the legal frameworks that are holding them back, or so-called legal frameworks holding them back. What other people are doing today is available. So your index, for example, will provide you results of the fact that there are Indian companies headquartered in India who are doing all this cool stuff. So there is a lot of learning, and there's best practice sharing that they can actually do. So once that's moved out of the way, there is an opportunity to share, to learn from each other. And I think the more you share and learn, you will get more ideas. And I think every organization is structured very uniquely. And it's important for you to look at how you integrate this in the context of the culture of your organization. And I think that's a unique challenge that rests with every organization. And I don't want to kind of broad brush it and say, just take it, apply it across. I don't want to do that. So I think just be respectful of ecosystems, cultures, and, but I'm just saying it is possible to move the needle, even with the most, the toughest of critics, the people who are kind of stuck for the longest time in the same space. It's possible to move it.
Thank you. These are very, very important notes and reminders for, I think, every organization. And, you've brought in historicity to this. You've brought in the law, and you've also brought in the concept of patience. And all of these are very, very good to think of, very necessary, and very, very good note for us to end this conversation on, because this is I think you've said that it's not a blueprint, but I think this is a really nice way to sort of lay out the path ahead. Thank you so much for joining us, Aruna. Once again, big congratulations to you and the Infosys team for reaching the top 3 winners of the Pride Circle Ally Challenge. It's really encouraging to hear about the steps you've taken for LGBT+ inclusion, and for making people feel safer and more welcome at the workplace. So final note is thank you for guiding so many of your employees onto the path of allyship.
Shambhavi, thank you so much. I will fail in my duty if I do not acknowledge the efforts of Pride Circle. I think Pride Circle as an organization has come such a long way with such powerful leadership of every one of you doing your best, doing what you do best every day. So I want to wish Pride Circle the very best. May you continue to grow, prosper, and build a community of people who really care, who are networked, who have relationships, and above all, are compassionate. I think we can all do with a world that has more compassion.
Definitely. And we're so happy to have you as part of that community.